welcome back. My name is Maneet and I am a medical student at St. George's University School of Medicine. So for today's video, I am just going to go over Term 5, so just an overall recap of how it's structured, content, and just any tips or pieces of advice I have for those of you that are going into Term 5 or maybe in Term 5. And yeah, so I hope this video is helpful. Like always, please feel free to contact me on my social media or leave a comment down below if you have any questions or if you just want to talk. I'm always more than happy to help. So let's begin. Now you're reaching the end of your time on the island, end of basic sciences, at the end of your first 2 years, and I know it's very stressful. You see dedicated, you see STAP, you see clinical rotation. I will say please do not get too boggled down with what's to come. You need to pass Term 5 in order to go to those steps, so do your very best to succeed in Term 5 and then focus on what's to come, because if you don't pass Term 5 and get through Term 5 and learn the content in Term 5, the rest will be significantly harder. So yeah, so let's begin. The recap, kind of how Term 5 is structured. So you have 4 modules, and then you have OSCE, you have professionalism points, you have 2 patient care assessments or assignments, and then you have a case presentation. So the structure of Term 5 is just a little bit different than what you were probably used to in previous terms. But again, so doable, and you got this, and you will succeed. So in terms of the content of Term 5, so you have 4 modules. The first module, called M&I, it is essentially a continuation of Term 4. So it's structured in Term 4. Please study for M&I the same way that you studied in Term 4. It is very much structured in the same way. You're going to go over pathologies, micro, and pharm. M&I is long. It is 6 weeks, and there is a lot of content. For a lot of us, M&I was difficult. You're going to learn all the antibiotics, all the antivirals, all the antifungals, and so many more drugs, all the antibiotics essentially. And then also there's a lot of infections and just like a lot of MSK and neuro and peds that is covered within M&I. So it is a very long and very content heavy module. There's going to be a lot that you're going to learn and a lot of little details that you have to know. So for this one, it is difficult. I'm not going to lie to you guys. And so the last 3 modules of Term 5, they are called CPRH, GOER, and DNPR. These are essentially structured to help you prepare for STEP. The comprehensive reviews of all the systems in each module. So for example, CPRH is cardio, pulm, renal, and heme. So it's 4 weeks long. Every week you're going to focus on a different system. This is how the next 3 exams are structured, the next 3 modules. So each week you're going to cover a system, and it is a lot. So you have to stay on top of it, because if you don't, in Term 5 there's not much room where you have like days off to catch up, because once 1 week is done, the next week you're on to the new system. It is okay if you fall behind, but just be mindful of that this is structured a little bit differently than what you are used to. So like I mentioned, it is a comprehensive review, so it's essentially everything you've already learned since beginning at SGU, with maybe a little bit of additional information. So for instance, I noticed that pathophysiology was like something new that I hadn't seen before that they added in Term 5. So please stick to your lectures when you're studying for this, because included in lectures is what's going to be on the exam. Like, focus on your lectures. If there's something in lectures you don't know, then go back to previous SGU lectures or supplement with outside resources. And so the first exam, like I mentioned, is CPRH. So you have cardio, pulmonary, renal, and heme. Then you have GOER, which is GI, obstetrics, endo, and reproductive. Then you have DNPR, which is dermatology, neuro, peds, and rheumatology. So a lot of content that's going to be thrown your way, but again, stick to how you study and you got this. For these exams, I noticed that it's a lot of how does each system affect the other. So you have to be able to now think very conceptually, think very big picture of how does one system affect the other. If there's one thing wrong, for instance, in cardio, how does it affect renal or pulm, and so forth. On top of these modules, you're going to have 3 OSCEs. So they are structured in the same way that your final OSCE in Term 4 was structured. So you have one at the end of M&I. Then you're going to have one, which is a group OSCE that you're going to complete with your clinical skills group. And then you have one at the very end of the term. The first one and the very last one are structured same way. 17 minutes, 3 stations, 10 minutes for your soap note. You know the routine by the end. It becomes very like second nature at one point. And then again, professionalism points is just showing up on time, attending everything, following the attendance policies, following the dress code for different things, like for instance when you have to wear scrubs versus when you have to wear professional clothing. And then you have your 2 PCA assignments and your case presentation assignments. So essentially for your PCA assignments, once you start going to hospital, take very, very good complete notes of your patients. So if you see a patient that is very interesting, their case is very interesting, ask all the questions, everything that you might need for your PCA assignment. So what I would advise is once you know your hospital visits are about to start, I would look at the requirements of your PCA assignment to ensure that you get all the information when you're at hospital. So what I used to do is when I would go to the hospital is I would have a little notebook and I would have subheadings for everything. So like for HPI, for CC, for like physical exam, for family history, past medical history. So kind of how you would do your patient encounter in OSCE, approach hospital that exact same way. I would follow that same kind of structure, but also please look over the rubric for your PCAs just to make sure if there's anything in there that might be like new or something you're not used to, you cover when you go to the hospital, so you have all the information that you need for your PCA assignment. So for your PCA, you're going to have 2 assignments. So essentially when one is due, all the patient encounters before that, you can use any of those cases for that PCA assignment. For the second one, you can see any of the cases before that for that PCA assignment. Both of the PCAs have a similar structure. So it's a SOAP note, which why it's so important that you get all the information during hospital visits. Then it's an evidence-based discussion. So for the evidence-based discussion, you're just researching on the topic, and the guideline of how to do this is all in the PDF that the school provides. And then you have a reflective essay that you have to do. They're not essays per se, like not like pages and pages long. They include all the little like details of how many pages, how many words in the rubric. So please take a look at that. Don't forget. And also, I know like going to the hospital, like that seems so scary and everything, but know that all the doctors are very nice. Everyone is very nice. Everyone is very respectful. It's a learning opportunity. So yeah, so try your best, be brave, you got it. So at the end of term 5, you have a case presentation. And essentially for the case presentation, you are going to pick one of your cases that you did your PCA assignment on and do your case presentation assignment on. So for your case presentation assignment, this is a PowerPoint presentation or like a slideshow presentation that you are going to be presenting to a group of students that SGU is going to make the groups and tell you like when you're presenting, who's in your group, all those things. So it's not that many students. If I remember correctly, I want to say 6 to 10, somewhere in between then, and you're going to have a facilitator. It's a very intimate setting. It's nothing too scary. You, at that point in term 5, you become very familiar with everyone. So a lot of familiar faces will be in the room. Yeah, so just like overall, be very detailed when you're doing your patient encounter so you have good cases and all the information to get great scores on the case presentation and the PCA. So like I mentioned, hospital visits, they start after M&Is. So you have no hospital visits for the first 6 weeks of term 5, and then you'll have a hospital visit every single week up until the end. Like every group, like whether you're group A, B, C, or D, is a different day, and the week before is you will receive your schedule of like which ward or which hospital unit you will be on with your group. Hospitals get very tiring. They are very hot. I found that a lot of the units didn't have AC, so just be mindful of that. Bring a water bottle, maybe bring a granola bar. For hospital visits, you have to wear professional clothing. So in the syllabus, there is requirements of what's allowed, what isn't. So please follow those requirements, because if you aren't following them, you will not be able to attend hospital, and you cannot miss like a lot of them, like based on the attendance policy. So please follow those. You don't want to like use a skip for no reason. Like you want to be strategic with your skips, use them, keep them for emergencies. So please follow those requirements. Yeah, and I know you need a white coat for those. So yeah, everything's listed in the syllabus for dress code, and please take a look at that before you head to the island for term 5 so you have everything that you need. And so yeah, so you have hospital visits, and then you also have 2 sim labs. So can't exactly remember the number of hospital visits that you have as total, but 2 of those will be sim labs at the university. So it'll be a real life like patient encounter. You're just not going to the hospital and you're just staying on campus. But again, this will all be emailed out the previous week with all the details. And then you will have Belford small groups. I believe they were every single week, so you're just going to go over pathology, pharmacology, microbiology. They are, again, student-led. Facilitators don't teach. They're there to answer questions, but for in term 5, it's more so of just a way to like talk and work through cases as a group. There's not necessarily much prep work that goes into the ones in term 5. And then you will also have B-lines. So for this, again, it's very similar. You're gonna go through HPIs, PE, up with diagnoses, but also you will be able to see scans and blood work and blood tests. So now in term 5, they've added that into your B-line prep, which is very helpful because it makes you feel like a real doctor, where you have access to all the scans, you have access to all the blood work, and this is very helpful in coming up with the diagnosis. Also, one more thing, in term 5, you will have these things called USLME RX quizzes. So SGU is going to assign you a few quizzes per module. So just what I tried to do is I tried to do one weekly. So for instance, let's say for CPRH, also one thing, they start after M&I. So all these module quizzes will be for the last 3 exams. So I found, like, let's say you did cardio one week, I would try to do the cardio quiz that weekend. They were not for grades, like your percentage that you got on the quiz is not what you were going to get overall. They were for participation marks, but they were helpful. And they're just like extra practice, and that's like very important to just kind of work through your logic, see if you have any knowledge gaps. I think I've covered everything in terms of like structure and content of term 5. Now some tips and just like things about term 5 overall. I noticed that hospital days for me were not as productive just because hospital was 4 hours in the heat, a lot of walking, just like they were just draining. Like I just found that they were very draining, and then after I would always have lectures. So I found that there wasn't enough time to even like study on those days, but also on top of that you have fatigue because you've been up since the morning in the heat. So what I found is when I would plan out my week is for those hospital days is I wouldn't give myself as much to do because I just was tired, so I wasn't going to be productive. I wasn't going to like learn that content the best. So then when I had a morning off where I didn't have a beeline or small group or anything, is I would use those mornings off very efficiently. Because in term 5, it's a different type of burnout. I think it might be like, oh, you know, you're at the end. Hospitals, there's a lot more like random things that you have going on now. So I noticed, like, please take advantage of your mornings off. That's what worked for me is I had a consistent sleep schedule. So I would wake up same time and I would use those mornings to kind of catch up. Don't forget professional clothes because you need those for hospital. So please look at the syllabus before you head to the island for term 5 just to make sure you have enough clothing that meets all the requirements of SGU. And just like one last little thing about term 5 is I know it's really daunting. You see step, you see rotations up on the horizon. Please don't get too boggled down in that. Like for me, what worked best was to focus on SGU, focus on their requirements to ensure that I learned the content that they were teaching in order to pass the term so I can move on to the next step. Focus on what's the task at hand. Please, please, please do not let yourself get too carried away and too overwhelmed with what's to come, because then you're just going to stress yourself out and not be as productive in accomplishing what needs to be completed like then. And before I forget, SGU does give you a subscription to UWorld, so that is just something that's good to have if you want like extra practice or anything. So they do provide you with that. Yeah. And also it's like for study strategies, just stick to what works for you. So for me, I stuck to what I had always been doing, and then I implemented for the last 3 modules boards and beyond when it was needed. So if there was like, let's say for cardio, I couldn't follow what was going on in the lecture notes, then I would go back to boards and beyond and watch boards and beyond to get that understanding of that content. And then I also, what I did is one thing I tried to keep on top of is I went through my first aid and I highlighted and color coordinated and like annotated as we were going through the system and lecture. So if we were going, let's say cardio this week, I tried to get through the entire cardio like chapter in first aid that week. For me, that just works. I went through lectures and then I went through like first aid, and I had so many passes of the material in different formats that I just felt like it helped stick. So I would advise doing that just so that there's like a little less essentially that you have to like worry about when it gets to dedicated, because that is going to help you both in term 5 but then also prepare you for the next step. So that's what I found worked for me. That's kind of the only like step prep I did during term 5. Again, like I always say, please try to do something every single day for yourself. You deserve it. You need to do that for yourself. Don't sacrifice sleep. If you know you need 8 hours of sleep, please, please, please get your 8 hours of sleep. And again, I know now at this point, imposter syndrome, burnout is going to be very, very intense. But know that you are so deserving of becoming a physician. you are going to make a phenomenal physician, and you will get everything you dreamed and worked for. So yeah, with that, just want to say again, if you have any questions or you need any advice or you just want to talk to a fellow medical student, I am always here, and I will leave my social media and everything down below. But yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your day and good luck on this journey of becoming a doctor. Thank you.